Since the federal government began Operation Metro Surge in the Minneapolis-St. Paul region, the news coming out of the area has been fast and seemingly nonstop. On January 6th, Renee Good was shot and killed by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement officers, and Alex Preddy was killed by the United States Customs and Border Protection agents on January 26th. The world has watched scenes of protest and violence, much of them told through the lens of citizen videos posted and shared across social media. The flurry of content and information coming out of Minneapolis has been hard to process and understand. Matt Sepic is a correspondent for Minnesota Public Radio, and he and his colleagues have been covering these events as they unfold. We sat down with Sepic to discuss how he covers breaking news as a professional and how we can make sense of the information overload that comes from fast moving events. Okay, so I know right now, with all that's been happening with the federal operation in Minnesota and the tensions it's definitely creating, there's a lot of information and conflicting information, like you said, circulating. Can you start by telling us what it's been like reporting on this from the front lines?
It's been extremely busy. A lot of deadlines, a lot of stuff that we need to get out there. My job here at Minnesota Public Radio, I'm primarily, well, most of us are general assignment reporters, but I, in recent years, have gradually drifted into the beat of covering state and federal courts, and that's turned out to primarily be federal courts. So I've been busy with that. The folks who are literally on the front lines, out in the streets covering protests, are some of my colleagues, Ben Hovland and Karem Ugel, particularly our photographers who have been out covering a lot of the protests. I also covered the protests and the civil unrest after George Floyd in 2020, almost 6 years ago now, where I was out on the street more. This time I've been inside chasing a lot of what's going on in federal courts. There have been a lot of challenges legally to the administration's operation here, hundreds of cases known as petitions of habeas corpus, where people who allege they've been arrested illegally have attorneys file these petitions and try to get them out of jail. They've been largely successful in doing that. It's just a flurry of litigation. So I've been following a lot of those cases along with my colleagues who cover immigration more specifically. I've also been covering a lot of other civil cases related to the operation. We had lawsuits over protesters' rights. That have been filed, as well as a case I just covered last week, talked about on NPR yesterday, where people are challenging DHS's not allow challenging the fact that DHS is not allowing people in detention to have access to legal counsel. So a lot of really big, important cases going on now in federal court, and I've been busy of doing the not fancy part of this job, which is digging into Pacer, and Pacer is the federal court computer system. Been following a lot of cases, reading a lot of court documents, running to hearings. Luckily, my office is a block from the federal courthouse in Minneapolis, and I know a lot of people in the legal community here, so that's made it a lot easier.
You mentioned digging into the actual database. I wanted to know how you sort of work with your team to figure out what information is correct and what isn't before you actually report on it.
Well, we, have definitely a very strict and rigorous editorial process here. I don't go on the air with any story, particularly, any written or story or web story, without it getting fact checked and reviewed. The scripts, that is, and copy that goes up online by an editor in the newsroom in St. Paul. I've also been working very closely with editors at National Public Radio, and they have even more of a multi-step process for going through and checking everything. Because what I do is primarily based in the legal process and in what goes on in court. Generally speaking, if something is in a court document, it is fairly trustworthy. Certainly, you can lie in court, but judges generally frown upon that. So, it is easier in some ways working as a legal affairs reporter because when I see something in a court document, I can generally rely on I can generally believe that it's factual. Of course, there's a big caveat there. Now we're seeing a lot of exaggerated criminal charges, particularly against protesters. There's been more than 2 dozen protesters charged in federal court, and what we're finding is that what the government is alleging in these affidavits and criminal complaints is not actually what happened, and they're challenging that as is their right in court. So we have to be very careful what we're hearing from federal agents, from now federal prosecutors, people we could traditionally in many cases, and I say that with an asterisk, trust to tell the truth, at least in court.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you look a lot at court cases and court documents to get your information for the reporting. I feel like right now there are many clips or photos online from people actually on the ground and on the front lines, but a lot of what's out there hasn't yet been verified. Do you ever get any social media clips or videos and then you sort of have to decipher what's real and what isn't? What's the process of that?
Well, before we post anything or use any videos from social media in our coverage, we always ask permission from the person who posted those videos or created those videos, just as part of our regular process. And that serves also to help us fact check and determine whether the person who put that video up is credible. Case in point, a couple of weeks ago, I got a tip from source in the legal community that a woman, an ICE observer, about an hour south of here in St. Peter, Minnesota, had been pulled over while legally observing ICE agents, following them through her community. And I Okay, wow, that's quite a tip. How do we verify that? Well, the way we did is that I interviewed the woman and her husband for an hour, verified some of her claims with the local police chief, although he didn't really want to talk too much. Um, this was a case where the police in this community intervened in some capacity and got ICE to turn around and return this woman who they just arrested to the police station, and the chief drove her home. And the woman, as an ICE observer, recorded dash cam video. She provided it to me. I interviewed her and her husband. I checked out their basic biographical details in public records, and everything that they had told me about themselves checked out. And what they told me in this hour-long on-the-record interview was nothing they told me was inconsistent with the video that they shared. So I determined that they were credible. I wound up having to pass the reporting that I did off to a colleague because I had to go cover something else in court. But between the two of us and an editor, we determined that, hey, this story was valid. This video is valid. There's nothing faked here. And we went with the story, and you may have seen the video of the woman in St. Peter, Minnesota, getting arrested. That was ours. But that, to answer your question, went through a rigorous process that we put everything through. I mean, whether there's video or not. I mean, we're always vetting sources for their credibility. It's the job, because all we have is our credibility. If we're putting people on the air that turn out to not be credible later, it hurts us. It makes us look bad and makes our audience less likely to trust us. My colleague Hannah Yang wound up doing that story for National Public Radio, and there were more editors there who asked more questions of us, and really, wanted to be sure what we were going with was accurate. So that story was vetted as much as it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, as a reporter, I can imagine that your credibility is one of the most important factors of,
It's the most important thing. I
yeah,
mean, without that, forget it.
right, right. Exactly. So building off of what you were saying about vetting information and making sure that it's actually accurate, are there any red flags that immediately make you question whether a video is accurate?
Well, I guess if somebody's got six fingers on one hand, that would be a one sign. It's very easy to fake things now with all sorts of digital tools that I don't like to call artificial intelligence because that's a marketing term. But right, I mean, it goes back to who the source is of this video. If it's somebody on X, Twitter, that has 20 followers and is constantly churning out videos, that raises a few red flags. If it's somebody using their real name, they have a track record of posting legitimate things on social media, you're more likely to trust that. But it also goes back to asking permission to use the video and verifying the source. Um, and another case in point too. I mean, if you meet the person face to face, it's even better. I mean, the shooting of Renee Macklin, or I should say, the shooting of Alex Preddy, my photographer colleague Ben Hovland was down there at the scene. He found one of the witnesses who recorded video that she posted to social media. He got that video directly from her. She airdropped it to him. And he was able to verify literally face to face that she was the one who recorded this and got the original video off of her phone. And there's not not a real easy way that you're going to fake something like that and hand it off within minutes of the tragedy happening to a photographer. And that's why, I mean, going out, talking to people, asking questions is the most important thing you can do as a journalist. I mean, it's what we've always done. The technology has changed. But that's what I'd say to young people starting in this field. I mean, sure, there's plenty of things you can look up, you can find on social media, but don't hesitate to pick up the phone. Don't hesitate to go knock on doors. Um, because you build those relationships of trust with sources by actually talking to them, telling them who you are, letting them know you're for real, and they let you know the same.
Wow. I just know that especially for teens today, I feel like many people are watching all this coverage and they don't live in Minneapolis, so it's definitely harder for them to watch it through their phones and sometimes thousands of miles away. So I feel like it's definitely harder for those people who don't live so close to the actual coverage and when it's happening it's harder to decipher what's real and what isn't. So, for people who don't live in Minneapolis but are consuming this constant coverage, how should they responsibly process what they're seeing?
Well, look to trusted news organizations and verify the information that you're getting the same way you would with anything else. Who's posting it? What forum are they using? Which social media sites are they using? What is their history of posting? As I say, if it's some brand new account with a lot of numbers in the name that was started a month ago and has very few followers and has very little history of posting, that would be suspect. I think the best thing you can do, I mean, brands do matter. I mean, follow trusted organizations, local media, or the local TV stations here have been very good. The Star Tribune newspaper is one of the most, probably the strongest regional newspaper in the country, still standing. Certainly, public media outlets in various communities. Minnesota Public Radio has been around for almost 60 years, and we have a robust and growing social media presence as well. As I say, doing more video. Those are places to start.
Great. I also feel like teens definitely resonate with the growing social media of certain public news organizations. Um, as a teen and as teens are watching this constant coverage, what steps would you recommend everyday news consumers, especially teens, take before actually sharing something online?
Well, the same rules apply. I mean, we wouldn't share anything that we didn't verify ourselves, and it's very easy to reshare some viral clip. You see a lot of other people have done it. Um, I would say, and I tell this to my own teens, pause a minute. Is this real? Um, where is who's the source? What might their motivation be? Is it a real news organization that has posted this? Is it something that has popped up more recently? Um, and use common sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when a teen sees a big headline or something that everyone's reposting on social media, their first instinct is just to repost it, jump on the bandwagon. But when you actually take a deeper look into it, just pause for even 1 minute and actually read the entire thing beneath the headline.
Yeah, read beyond the headline. That's very good advice. And that's something as journalists too, we have to be careful of because not everybody's reading even into the first couple of graphs of the story. They are oftentimes reading the headline, and the headline is how something's framed. Um, and yeah, even if you're seeing something from a traditional news organization in their headline, you might want to read it before reposting.
So you did mention that even journalists can um, phrase headlines sometimes in a way that can maybe seem like the story is a little bit maybe biased or just so that teens or even consumers can really be interested in the story. I just wanted to know, what do you wish more people understood about how journalists can verify information during moments like these when technology is so prevalent, especially social media, and when headlines like these can spread all over and maybe misinformation can circulate?
I think the most important thing to know is that we do have a process in place and we are verifying this information. That's what differentiates traditional news organizations from randos on social media is that before we publish a story, before we repost something to social media, we have a process for checking that it is indeed legitimate.
Okay, and I would love for you to add anything else if I haven't asked you a specific question, or if you wanted to add anything else that you haven't mentioned.
Well, that's always the most important question that I ask people, and that's what always elicits the best answer. So I'll give that a shot. I would say the events over the past 2 months here in Minneapolis and St. Paul really have driven home for me the importance of having robust local media that already has a built-in trust with the audiences here. And not only with the audiences, but with sources. People come to us with tips, people come to us with story ideas, and we listen to them. And the national media have been coming in here, and I throw no shade at them. They do an excellent job. I've been working with colleagues from National Public Radio who've flown in here to cover the events. But as they have told me, there's no substitute for having reporters who actually live in a community where their kids go to school, they shop at the grocery stores, they're out on the streets, they know folks in the community. We're part of this community. And we know this community. I've lived here for over 15 years, and there's no beating having reporters on the ground with those connections, particularly at a time of crisis like this.
Absolutely. And you did mention the community in Minneapolis and everything that's happening today. And this morning, there were reports that the federal enforcement surge in Minneapolis
Right.
may be ending this week. So I just wanted to know, when a major development happens like this, how do you responsibly responsibly report on that shift?
This is an all hands on deck day. I had a colleague this morning who was at Tom Homan's news conference where he announced this end to the so-called surge. And the governor just had a news conference a little bit ago, Governor Tim Walz. I was watching that. Another colleague was there to ask questions. I've been, as I say, in my office a lot, kind of monitoring these feeds. So it's one of these all hands on deck sort of days in the newsroom where everybody on every beat is contributing something to the coverage. It's kind of like a New Orleans gumbo where we'll have have a story up, and it may just be not even a byline on it. It just says NPR News staff because everybody's contributing a little bit of something to the stew. And then as the day goes on, we kind of branch off, work on individual stories, immigration beat, politics beat. I mean, this has affected education. Every single beat reporter in our newsroom has had to cover some aspect of this. So today is the day one of this story, which is the end, and it seems from what the governor said at the news conference just a little bit ago that he believes that this is really over. There are others who are skeptical. They will wait to see that there are no longer uh, tinted window SUVs and masked agents pouring out of the federal building near the airport. Um, but as I say, it's an all hands sort of day. We have stories up on the web now that editors have put together based on what we've seen coming in from reporters in the news conferences. I'm on the hook to be on NPR on All Things Considered here in a couple of hours. I'm pulling together a script for that, and other colleagues are working on their own stories. One here is about to go on our show at noon to talk about the developments this morning. So it's one of those days where it's a fire hose of news.
Yeah, it's a big day. It's a big shift.
That's not the end of it. I mean, there are many more stories to do. This litigation, which is my beat, will continue. There's all these habeas cases of people who were arrested. I'm sure there will be lawsuits by the state to recover the money that was lost, the economic impact of this operation. And then obviously the big story is the investigation into the two fatal shootings of Renee Macklin Good and Alex Preddy by these ICE agents. They are still presumably out. I don't know that they're working, but the feds have said they're investigating this on their own. They've pushed the state police out of the investigation, and that's going to be a major story going forward with something like this. You remember after George Floyd, the officers were arrested and charged immediately. That didn't happen here. There's a lot yet to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I just want to say thank you so much for
Of
talking.
course. Well, thank you for what you're doing here. I think it's such an important thing that there even exists a teen fact-checking program. So I hope you're able to spread the word to everybody in your school about what you're doing and the importance of this, particularly in this age of disinformation.
Yeah, I do try. It
Yep, it's a fire hose. I know.
is. Great. Thank
All
you so
right. Well, good luck to you. Thanks for
much.
inviting me here.